You've said you're interested in leading the caucus. Why?
Yes.
What could you get accomplished that otherwise might not get done?
Sure. Well, the caucus is a member services arm of our membership, and that means that we try to make sure that members and their staff are successful. So whether that's incoming members that are going to need a lot of help getting their offices set up and hitting the ground running, or whether that means acquainting some of our members with newer communication platforms and ways to communicate what they're working on and why it's important to their constituents. But more than anything else, I think the caucus chair is the convener of the caucus. It is the position that brings the caucus together to discuss issues, pieces of legislation, but also issues within our caucus, and tries to build consensus so that we can all move forward in the same direction. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to do that job. I've served in the vice chair role. I've worked very closely with our caucus chairman, Joe Crowley, over the last 18 months. I'm familiar with what the role entails, and I think I bring some great skills to the table in that regard.
Congressman, this is an open seat, as it were, because, as we said, Joe Crowley lost his primary in New York. Would you be in favor, or at least open to the possibility of other changes in the leadership? Let's start with Nancy Pelosi, who's become something of a lightning rod. Do you think that the Democrats should be at least thinking about generational change? Well, I've stated that position earlier. I think we need to have those conversations in the caucus. But what ultimately happens with our leadership will be determined by the new members of Congress that will be serving in the next Congress. And that won't happen until the midterm elections have passed. And I think I can say without a doubt that every single member of our caucus right now is focused on winning their elections and on helping some outstanding candidates that are running across the country win their elections so that we can recapture the majority. If we don't recapture the majority, the conversation's kind of moot. So the number one priority is to win back control of the House. Exactly so. And I know you want to head the caucus either way, but let's be frank. It's going to be more fun if, in fact, the Democrats take back control of the House to have that very high position in authority. Let's assume, and it's just an assumption, we don't know how it's going to come out. Let's assume that, in fact, the Democrats do retake control of the House. What are you going to do with it? Well, there are a number of issues that have languished under Republican majority rule. We really need to shore up our health care system. Just about everywhere that I travel around the country and talk to people, somebody approaches me with a personal story from someone in their family or they themselves of a pre-existing condition and how concerned they are about that. So I imagine that health care will be one of our top priorities. I also think that infrastructure is an issue that resonates in every district in this country, whether it's rural, urban, or suburban. We need a robust infrastructure so that we can move goods and people efficiently throughout our country. That creates jobs. It also has a multiplier effect through the economy. So I definitely think that infrastructure will be a top priority. One of the other priorities that we've discussed on the Ways and Means Committee is pension security and retirement security. So whether that's shoring up Social Security and increasing the life of that trust fund, or helping get our hands around the very critical multi-employer pension problem that is quickly coming to a head, those will also be priorities for that committee. So that's very helpful, laying out those priorities. I noticed none of those priorities were investigating President Trump or things in the administration, or even for the I word, impeachment. If you were a member of leadership even higher than you are now, if you ran the caucus, would you be trying to discourage your fellow Democrats from spending a lot of time and effort on investigating the president? Well, I think that there has to be oversight. We have seen the Republican majority basically refuse to conduct oversight, and we are a co-equal branch of government. We have a responsibility to hold the administration accountable and to make sure that our federal agencies are being run efficiently. So I do think that there will be oversight in the next Congress should Democrats reclaim the majority. But that's not to the exclusion of the legislative projects that we really want to get underway, because if the American people entrust us to govern this country, we have to produce. So I think we have to balance both, but I think we have to do both. So finally, Congresswoman, what about taxes? There's a lot of criticism from the Democrats that the taxes cuts that have been put forward really benefit the wealthier, whether it's corporations or individuals. Will there be an effort for the leadership, if in fact the Democrats take over the House, to undo some of that, particularly, for example, raise corporate income tax? Well, I think that the two tax bills that were passed on,
basically Republican support only, do benefit substantially the wealthiest in this country and aren't the middle class tax cuts that they promised that they would give to America's working families. So restoring some balance to the tax code, I think, will be a priority. In particular, a lot of middle class families in my district, for example, are really impacted by the cap on the state and local tax deductions, the SALT deductions. That impacts a lot of working families, and it's quite an unfair burden. So there probably will be some discussion about how we can balance the benefits of the tax code a little bit more to give that relief truly to the middle class and not just give these big corporate giveaways to those that need it the least. And by the way, both tax bills, the one that just passed off the floor this morning, add trillions of dollars to our debt, which then Republicans conveniently say, oh, look, we're running deficits. We need to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And those are benefits that middle-class families really rely on. So we have to be more fiscally responsible, and we have to be more balanced in our approach to the tax code.